Spoken, a memoir sprinkled with a little quadriplegia. Chapter 2, As the Calendar Turns. Hayrack Ride Adventure. Kay is a full-time pioneer of Jehovah's Witnesses who lives in the basement of the Kingdom Hall right next to my house in St. Edward. As a pioneer, she spends her time doing field service work, going door to door to recruit people into Jehovah God's organization so they can have an everlasting life. Kay's parents have a farm in the area and they work together to create a hay rack ride experience for all of the Jehovah's Witnesses families and individuals to get together and share in fellowship outside of worship services. Since Jehovah's Witnesses only associate with each other, it is nice when the adults within the congregation plan fun fellowship activities apart from the routinely practiced worship services that members are involved in several days a week. Driving to the farm. Driving to the farm requires a lot of driving on gravel dirt roads at speeds up to 50 miles per hour, creating dust streams similar to how jet streams are created in the sky. Peering out the back window with my knees on the back seat, I watch these dust streams spew from the back of the vehicle as we are traveling up and down rural back roads. I can see how the dust streams are at first aggressively dense, coming out from the rear of the vehicle, but then calmly fade away as time lapses from the contact of the four wheels on our vehicle. This is especially noticeable when we are descending a hill. The sound of the running vehicle, the sound generated from driving on a gravel dirt road, the up and down motion of driving on the hillside terrain, and watching these dust streams is very relaxing for me. Arrival and exploring. When my mom and older sister Rhonda announce we are approaching the driveway of Kay's parents, my excitement kicks in to visually take everything in. They have a long driveway off of the main gravel road, and on one side of this driveway are hay bales all neatly stacked next to each other the whole length of the driveway. They catch my attention because someone intentionally designed these hay bales with props to make it look like one large caterpillar, with the first hay bale at the beginning of the driveway having a cartoonish caterpillar face. After parking at the farm and meeting up with some of my friends, we climb up on the rear end of the caterpillar hay bales with the goal of successfully navigating from the top of these bales all the way to the head of the caterpillar. Initially, getting up on these hay bales is a challenge, but also challenging is being able to keep your balance and navigate the gaps in between each hay bale. Exploring this farm is so much fun because we excitingly discover more things Kay and her parents did to make this experience very enjoyable for a kid. For instance, walking through the farm grounds and noticing low-hanging limbs of several trees with individually wrapped pieces of gum and candy taped on the trees. Once I notice these treats being on one tree, it triggers a race to run around and collectively grab as much gum and candy as possible. Each part of the farm is a different attraction. Kay and the other adults take us kids through all of these attractions. There is a riverbank on this farm where I discover a bone white skull of a cattle or buffalo. I want this as my souvenir. Kay says I can have it as long as my mom approves. When I catch up to ask my mom, she says it's okay, so I collect a few more bone parts and fragments to take home. Thieving arrowheads. At some point during this adventure, I am inside the house of Kay's parents, and she is showing me this huge box of Native American arrowhead tips found on the farm at various times. They are so cool, and there's so many of them. They are all made from different stones with a variety of shapes, sharp edges, and pointed tips chiseled perfectly to be used to tip the arrow. Too shy to ask and scared not to receive the right answer, I steal at least 2 arrowheads. Evening gathering. Collectively, all in attendance get together in the evening around a fire pit to socialize with each other, making s'mores using graham crackers, marshmallows, and chocolate. The final thing we do this evening when the sun goes down is go on a slow hay rack ride, which consists of a tractor pulling a flatbed with several small rectangular hay bales organized on this trailer to offer different seating levels. The lighting sources we have are lanterns. I am getting tired and a little chilly, so I just curl up on a hay bale to observe the adults. There are several young adults who are consuming alcohol, so I am able to witness a much different side of these individuals than what I am used to seeing within the confines of the Kingdom Hall. I witness male and female adults getting playfully flirty with each other and kissing. I am only familiar with just seeing the worshiping, let's talk about Jehovah side of individuals, that I didn't know this other side existed. My best friend Jared's farm. Some of the memorable experiences Jared's farm involves how he has a lot of toys. He has He-Man, Masters of the Universe, Star Wars, an electronic handheld Pac-Man video game that is a miniature version of the large arcade game. Evidently, Carl, the elder of our congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses, has not seen Jared's violent toys. We give these toys attention when it is evening and too dark to go outside, or there is some other kind of complicated weather issue. I am pretty excited to venture through and play with his toys, but his attention already seems burnt out since he sees them every day. Difficulty spending the night. Jared, living out on a farm with no easily accessible neighbors, parks, stores, or anything, is probably why for me to come spend the night at his house is such a big thing for him. As much as I want and think I can spend 1 or 2 nights at Jared's house, it is difficult for me to handle the separation from my mom. My mom drives me over to Jared's house on the outskirts of Primrose, Nebraska, and drops me off during the day. I am distracted with playing around the farm with Jared, which keeps my mind off of my mom. However, when the evening starts to wind down, I begin to really miss the security I find with my mom. I go talk to Jared's mom, Janelle, and tell her I am really missing my mom and I want to go back home. A phone call is made to my mom, and I talk with her, pleading for her to pick me up. My mom doesn't make me responsible for my choice to agree to spend the night at Jared's house. Instead, she makes the 24-mile drive to get me. I do begin to get more comfortable with experiencing feelings of missing my mom and sticking to the goal of spending the night at Jared's house. One thing that helps me do this is when my mom purchases my very own sleeping bag and I can take my familiar pillow with me. So the act of being able to bring something from my house in my friend's house creates enough security for me to eventually fall asleep. Resist going to sleep. Even though we are instructed that it is bedtime and playtime is temporarily over to resume in the morning, we usually stay up talking about something. I talk to Jared about my experiences with Shirley and Regina. Jared talks to me about his experiences with a girl named Megan, who is also from a farming family and a fellow Jehovah's Witness. Since I am the so-called city boy, my relationship experiences are with other fellow city girls, whereas his are with farming girls. If we talk too loud, and it is evident we are not making an effort to fall asleep, one of his parents gets up to give us verbal warnings. If this is repetitive, we then are separated by one of his parents assigning designated spots for each of us to sleep. One time we are not cooperating with going to bed, Jared is literally removed and assigned to sleep in the bedroom with his parents. Jared and I, not to include John. Jared's dad, Rod, farms a minimum amount of pigs, cows, chickens, and some turkeys. He is mostly a grain farmer. If and when my brother John come with me to Jared's house, he ends up spending more time with Rod doing actual farm work rather than be with Jared and I. It works out like this. Even though Jared and I are instructed to include John in our playing activities, we often do not want to include him since he is younger by 2 years. Instead, Jared and I look for opportunities to flee and hide from John. For the most part, Jared instigates these planned events of excluding John. I, however, go along with them. So the common theme of every time Jared, myself, and my brother John are together involves creating and perfecting the craft of how we are going to not only get away from him at times to do our own thing, but often the games we construct involve hiding from him and witnessing him plea to be equally part of the game with us, rather than a forced piece of the game. Jared and I learn early if we ditch John, he goes back to the house and tells adult authorities about our behaviors. Then, before you know it, Jared and I hear an adult hollering for us to come back to the house to be reprimanded. I don't ever remember receiving punishment for my contributing involvement of not fairly including John as an equal playmate, but we get tired of this adult intervention. So Jared and I control the situation while still using John as a play piece by having him experience abandoning situations where Jared and I hide from him to the point when he cries, verbally threatens to go back to the house to tell adults, or just starts walking back towards the house. When Jared and I notice any of these three things, then and only then do we come out of the woodwork and try to talk John out of telling on us. We use our older age abilities of manipulation on my younger brother John. John wants to be an equal playmate, so he is tremendously forgiving. It may be a combination of John getting tired of being set up in these unfair situations and or adults witnessing and understanding it is John's best interest to not be subjected to this treatment. Regardless, John appears to enjoy his experiences with the adults tending to their farm responsibilities. The barn and other activities. Aside from tormenting my brother John, Jared and I play a lot in a barn located 100 feet from his double-wide trailer home. We climb ropes and ladders to each floor level of the barn just for something to do. The second floor of the barn is full of rectangular hay bales, so we try to create a passage climbing from the bottom to the top. This kind of playing involves physical challenges, accomplishments, and dares. How far will one of us jump from the top of something down to the bottom of something? In the hayloft, the hay is a little more forgiving when jumping from a distance into it. A part of this barn is home to some of the pigs the family owns. Large sows with their piglets lying around in corners of the wooden barn structure. We are told by adults to stay out of the pig pens because they can turn aggressive toward us. For the most part, we follow this instruction, but sometimes this becomes part of the dares we construct and challenge each other with. My brother, John, and I don't get too involved in pushing the envelope of us participating in a dare, but we are always intrigued to watch Jared. In regards to the pigs, the dare is something like climbing into the pig pen and getting as close to a mother sow as possible. There are a couple times when we throw dirt clods at a pig or mother sow to get a reaction and then run back to the ladder to escape. Other activities of play on the farm include climbing trees and farm equipment. There never is any interest in watching TV, and the only video game console that may have been available is Atari, but neither of us owns such entertainment. Being physically active outside is where our attention is. In the hot summers of Nebraska, Jared's parents place a big round cattle water tank under the shade of the tree near the trailer house. This cattle water tank makes well for a pretty sizable swimming pool with a circumference of about 8 to 10 feet and a depth of 3 to 4 feet. Meeting my Uncle Rick. My Uncle Rick, my mom's brother, is the first individual on my mom's side of the family to successfully reach out to my mom and be accepted to come visit us. I think this is because my Uncle Rick is a professed Christian, still false religion, and shows an interest in learning about Jehovah's Witnesses. When my mom tells us kids about Uncle Rick coming to visit, I am very excited and want to know exactly when he is going to show up. My mom tells us as much as she knew coming from Rick's vague commitments. For example, he may say, next weekend, and then approaching that weekend, there can be changes of plans, or if that weekend is still valid, it may be any day or any time between Friday and Sunday. I try to stay busy playing outside in anticipation of the second he pulls up in our driveway. Playtime and new experiences. After meeting Uncle Rick for the very first time, I love his visits because we always have such fun time together. We play basketball on the outdoor courts at St. Edward's Public Park, toss a football back and forth, play catch with a baseball and mitts, run around, be goofy and roughhouse, go on fishing trips, etc. Rick is like a big kid and he has such great influential power, which is always a benefit of something I want or want to do. He is an influential instrument to go out to eat instead of having home-cooked meals and doing fun things within the community we normally would not have participated in. Like when we drive 10 miles to Albion to have the whole family go to Pizza Hut to enjoy a pan pizza. With Rick, we get extra stuff like more pizza, a variety of more toppings, breadsticks, and sides. While in Albion, we talk about a drive-through theater I didn't even know existed and a movie starring Kenny Rogers called Six Pack. Of course, my mom pre-screens Rick with questions about movie content she does not want to expose her children to. Questions such as, is there any profanity? Is there any violence? Is there any nudity or sexual scenes? I believe my Uncle Rick genuinely answers these questions as much as he can remember, and my mom is satisfied with his positive answers. So we drive to the theater. Rick is very much so about indulging the human senses. So we justifiably get away with paying for a bunch of different concessions at the drive-thru. Again, these are just a lot of extra things we are not used to normally getting, and most likely for the reason my mom is a single parent with 4 kids. Of course, while watching the movie, there are quite a few movie scenes not meeting my mom's approval, and she is a little disappointed in Uncle Rick's judgment. Rick kind of laughs it off and says he did not remember it being in the movie. He does genuinely apologize to my mom. During Uncle Rick's visits, he shows positive progression by coming to meetings of worship at the Kingdom Hall and develops a true interest in learning the truth. It is very likely unspoken, but the most important thing is for Uncle Rick to be baptized into Jehovah's Witnesses, and then, and only then, will we be allowed to continually have such close association with him. Cold winter nights. The winter nights are very cold inside our house. We have a single wood burning stove in the living room that has pipes extending up into the bedrooms of the house to disperse some heat. There is a time when a plastic cup of water is left on the bedside table next to a window, and when we get up the very next morning, there is a thin layer of frozen ice on the surface. During these cold nights, I love sleeping next to my mom to capture her body warmth. One of my favorite spots to sleep, cuddled up against her, is when she is laying on either her right or left-hand side, both of her legs bent up, forming a lap, and then from her knees to her feet going straight down, legs bent forming a 90-degree angle. Basically, the body formation of someone sitting in a chair, but instead lying in that position on either their right or left-hand side. I prefer to cuddle in the pocket under my mom's butt and behind her calf muscles. My mom is large enough and I am small enough that a protective warmth fort is created. Bath nights. Our family shares one bathroom, one bath, and no shower. We have an old white iron bathtub with 4 claw-like legs gripping a ball. This tub is designed for one adult, with one end of the tub being a vertical wall and the other end having a nice slanted curve so a tub occupant can lay down almost fully submerged in water with their head and other portions of their body propped up on this curve. On the day and evening us kids are assigned to take baths, my brother, 4 years old, and I, 6 years old, take a bath together, on average 3 to 4 bath days a week. My mom has us taking a bath together because we are same sex, close in age, and it is less expensive and time efficient. Getting into the bathtub, the water temperature has to be just right before I commit to undressing. My mom is a professional accommodator in this respect. She is pretty accurate with blending hot and cold water together to fill up the tub. Stepping in feet first and then gradually introducing the rest of my body parts to the hot, steamy water. The most cautious body parts to submerge are the temperature-sensitive skin tissues of my penis, anus, and in between. I have to do a series of dip and retreat maneuvers before these body parts accept the temperature. Dip and retreat is when you go from a standing position and then you have your body dip down into a fetal position and slightly submerge these body parts and lift up just above the water surface for a couple of seconds, repeating this process. Then I get comfortable enough to commit to sitting on the bottom of the tub while extending and submerging my legs. Even though bath time is about personal cleanliness, to me, the importance is being comfortable and incorporating playtime. I don't have any specific bath toys other than the occasional hyped up but disappointing submarine you get from the bottom of the cereal box. My mom appropriately guides us along, allowing us to play while responsibly participating in washing our hair and body. We end up being in there long enough for one of us boys to request my mom to fill up a large cup with hot water and disperse it in the tub water near and around us. When it comes time for us to literally pull the plug, I sit in front by the drain because my brother has a fear he will go down the drain. The plug is a white rubber plug with a metal ring looped on top of it. This metal ring is connected to a chain semi-permanently mounted on the tub front wall. I pull the chain and pop the plug out and set it on a metal shelf, sharing space with our Zest soap located on the front vertical wall of the tub. I am intrigued watching the water tornado formation as the water is draining out of the tub. To use my hand and explore this tornado by feeling the water moving around my hand and how I can stop the tornado by placing my hand over the drain. The more water there is in the tub, the stronger the suction is on my hand. I dislike the fact when the water levels drain lower, it exposes more of my wet skin to the cooler atmosphere of the bathroom. My mom is very considerate of this by placing a space heater in the bathroom far enough away from the tub so as to give us motivation to seek warmth refuge by this space heater, thus getting us out of the tub. Sometimes it is a difficult transition, but through repetitive action, I learn not to try to savor the warmth of the water depleting fast down the drain. Instead, stand up in the tub and dry off as quickly as possible to step out of the tub and feel the drawing heat from the space heater. First grade with Mrs. T. As noted on a school report card in 1982, I am in the first grade at St. Edward Public Schools District number 17. My teacher's name is Alice. During this school year, I am mostly a B student with some A's in math and some C's in citizenship. My teacher does well by giving comments about me during each 4 periods. First period. Bob is a quick learner. He needs to work on good listening habits. Second period. Bob is a neat writer. He needs to slow himself down and check over his work. Third period. Bob needs to learn to take his turn and raise his hand during group discussion. Fourth period. Bob has a good head. I hope he will apply himself and always work to improve himself. Class comedian. Mrs. T walks around the classroom of students handing each one a school laminated construction paper clock with a short hand and a long hand. There is a center punch in the middle of the clock, holding the clock hands together in place, but allowing the hands to be manipulated to adjust times on the clock. My fellow peers find it funny when I manipulate the clock to the time of day when school is adjourned. I then stand up out of my seat, proudly showing everybody what time it is on my clock, and jokingly begin to walk towards the classroom door, portraying I am leaving while peers are watching, giggling, and laughing at my bold performance. All of a sudden, my teacher takes a deep breath, consuming all of the wind, powering my cells, and aggressively comes at me, grabbing me by my arm and plunging me down into my desk seat while scolding me for such conduct with words I don't remember, because it is such a shocking and unexpected reaction. All I do is stay instantly silent. Oh, poop! It is late morning in the first grade classroom, about an hour before we are dismissed to go outdoors for recess. Classmates and I are engaged in a game of charades where each student takes a turn to go to the front of the classroom to face the other students. During the middle part of this game, I am sitting at my desk actively shouting out guesses. Then, without forewarning or having any sensation of a fart brewing, which would have given me the choice of whether to pinch it or to let it come out, liquid diarrhea just spews out into my blue jeans as my unannounced show and tell. What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? I am not ready for this experience. All I know is my turn to participate in this classroom game is coming soon. I feel like I can possibly contain the smell if I am to stay seated. The embarrassment is tremendous, and I don't want anyone else to know. My demeanor changes from being the focus of positive attention in a game of charades to mentally withdrawing from the game. "Bob, it's your turn," announces Mrs. T. Clearly hesitant, I want to silence the smell between my butt and the seat of my chair, though it's not enough to get me out of participating. I can't think of something for my fellow peers to guess the answer, and I need to return to sitting down ASAP. So I accept some of the first guesses from peers. A true class comedian may charade, I pooped my pants, but I'm not about to openly tell anyone. Back at my desk, with the illusion I am sealing the smell, the problem still needs a solution. During recess, I still do not have the courage to verbally tell my classroom teacher what has happened. Instead, I just stand next to her in discomforting silence. Mrs. T rightfully takes notice of this and asks me, "Bob, what's wrong? Why aren't you playing with the rest of the kids?" As embarrassingly difficult as it is for me to disclose, I think this is the window of opportunity for me to make better my situation. After all, my house is only about 100 feet from the playground. My head down and in complete embarrassment, I stand next to my teacher without even looking her in the face and mumbling using the fewest possible words. She grants me permission to humbly walk home to where I know my mom is going to help me. Discovery of free gum. Often when my mom wants to really get the best variety and deals on food, we drive to a larger city such as Columbus, which is approximately 35 miles away from us. I like to help grocery shopping with my mom on these trips. If anything, it is something to do and a change of scenery. On a super good note, maybe if our behavior is good enough and our helping skills are worth noticing, there is a slight possibilities of getting some kind of candy treat from the selection of shelves lining and defining each checkout lane of the grocery store. There is no way to avoid these candy shelves when checking out and paying for groceries. So there is always the ask for a preferred candy. If that does not work, then I ask for a cheaper candy, gum, or toy object from the small individualized machines conveniently placed in the entrance and the exit of the stores. These machines can be as cheap as 1 penny for a single piece of Ford gum. Shopping with my mom in this grocery store warehouse business has me discover some free treats in the form of gum. My kid height and curious playfulness probably contributes to this discovery. What I discover is for some reason, people are intentionally taking their ABC gum and sticking it to the bottom of the store shelves. Many of these wads of gum are still soft enough to successfully remove with my fingers, and many times much of the flavor is still intact. The previous owner discarded a perfectly jet wad of gum prematurely, and I am not going to pass up on extracting the flavor as long as I can. Whenever I get gum, I chew it all day, even though there are at least 2 meal times when I place the wad somewhere on my plate or at the table where I am sitting. When it comes to going to bed at night, I place my wad of gum on the wooden headboard of my bed pretty much in the exact spot which becomes easy to identify. When the morning comes, I still have myself my wad of gum. I keep this cycle up as long as I can until either my mom instructs me to get rid of the gum or the gum gets too hard for me to chew. To help extend the life of this wad of gum, it is always helpful to replenish the wad with more gum purchased or found. Animals and Others Interlude. Nebraska is known as the beef state, so I am born into an animal agriculture society. Throughout my younger years, there are so many life's distractions, making it so easily possible not to question the depth of what I am eating, even though I know the simple basics of eating meat is only available by killing an animal. Bait the hook. Some of my distinct memories are in relation to animals. Like when I go fishing with my dad, I have him bait the hook for my own safety, but I remember not having a desire to hurt a nightcrawler or a minnow. However, I quickly justify my dad hurting them for the selfish gain of going fishing. Living things under railroad ties. There is the 12-stall gravel parking lot for the members of the Congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses that is part of the front yard of my family's house in St. Edward. Each parking spot is marked by having a wooden railroad tie so vehicles pull up to it like a curb. A railroad tie is a 7-inch by 9-inch by 8.5 feet long piece of heavy wood used by the railroad to place the tracks on top. With these railroad ties lying on the ground, I love to explore the living creatures under each of them. Living creatures I call crickets, night crawlers, roly-polies, garter snakes, grubs, pincher beetles, etc. I do not kill them. They are intriguing to me, so I catch them, hold them, visually study them, and release them. Actually, the whole process of me even turning over the railroad tie to expose these creatures is done in a thoughtfully caring way. From experience, I understand when I am going to turn a railroad tie over, I have to commit to the process and turn it over quickly. Because if I do not, the weight of the railroad tie gets the best of me with it only being partially turned over and ends up falling down to its original position and killing some of the creatures underneath it in the process. Healing a garter snake. I find a garter snake seeming to be in good shape, with the exception there is a cut on his body. I do what I know about healing cuts. I put some neosporin on the cut. When I do not see the garter snake the next day, I'm convinced I healed it. Cow tongue, show and tell. In second grade, at St. Edward's School, my teacher brings into the classroom the tongue of a cow she removed from one of her own as some sort of educational piece for us students to touch and talk about the taste buds, etc. I don't know what the educational importance is because all I can think about is the fact it was part of a once living animal. School slaughter. It is around my third and fourth grade years at St. Edward's School to be old enough to be a viewing participant of what the high school students do every year in an animal agriculture class. High school students slaughter a cow and pig at school and literally piece the animal's organs across long tables, identifying each. Then, every student of qualifying age is led in rows to walk through and view all the organs. This is another example of me not really understanding the educational purpose behind such an act, because all that is on my mind is this is a dead animal and all of its labeled body parts. Tuffy and the parakeets. There was a point in time living in St. Edward when, under the direct influence of my older sister Rhonda, we start to house parakeet birds as pets. Each bird has its own cage, but they socialize in a friendly manner together by visiting each other's cage when we leave the cage doors open. We have a white parakeet named Angel, a green one named Samson, and a blue one named Joshua. As you may have noticed, these names are derived from our Christianity influence. This is also a time we have a long-haired gray cat named Tuffy. According to my sister Rhonda and Mom, it appears Tuffy has not posed a threat to the birds. I don't remember if it is early in the morning or in the middle of the night, but when it happens, all of us are upstairs in our bedrooms. The birds and their cages are located along the wall in the living room downstairs. There is some sort of noise commotion, alerting my mom and Rhonda to go downstairs to inquire. The next thing I know is hearing this serious panic in their voices. I come running down the single flight of stairs inside our house, landing directly into our kitchen. There is a wall dividing the kitchen from the living room with an open walk-through entrance into the living room. As soon as I arrive in the kitchen, I see Rhonda crying, and she tells me Tuffy killed one or more of our birds by knocking the cages to the ground with enough force to expose the parakeets from the protected wires of the cage. I pause in horror and have no desire to go see the scene myself. Stray dog. There is this stray dog beginning to come around our house. It does not have a collar or tags and is almost the size and look of a German Shepherd. This dog is friendly when we see it, and we offer it some food and water a couple of times. My family has a really small, long-haired brown dog named Toby. One early afternoon, when I am outside playing with Toby, this stray dog comes around. I am thinking this stray dog is going to easily get along with Toby for the simple reason they are both dogs. All of a sudden, I have a concerning scare when this stray dog tries to pin Toby down and bite him enough to take a tuft of fur off of Toby. Toby is able to quickly get away safely and into our house. To respond, my mom calls animal control as us kids still try to keep this stray dog around so someone can come out to safely capture the dog and find it a loving home. A gentleman with animal control does come over fairly quickly, and it is pretty easy to take possession of this stray dog. My mom emphasizes to the animal control individual that the stray dog has never posed such a threat, is usually a well-behaved dog, and all we want is for him to find a good home for the dog. The animal control man leaves with the stray dog, and I am ultimately feeling happy about the situation. Come early evening, my family takes a short trip up to the city dump to drop off a lot of garbage. When we get to the city dump, I get out of the vehicle to help throw the trash in the big piles of garbage. While I am doing this, I look around my environment with curiosity and stumble across the easy-to-identify stray dog I thought was on his way to a better life. That is not the case. This stray dog is shot dead. Animal control didn't even try to find a home for this dog. I am very upset with this discovery and the man who lied to our family. For some unknown reason, our family does not have Toby very long, but we are able to convince my dad to adopt him. I do not want to get rid of Toby, but I am happy where he is going so I can still see him. It is not too much longer after my dad takes in Toby to care for him that he gets a very bad case of fleas. Instead of treating Toby for fleas, my dad kills him with his gun. Petting a bee. As a kid, I enjoyed getting as close as possible and watching a bee dance all over the white floral ball of a clover weed for only seconds and then take flight to another nearby. I don't know exactly what they are doing on the flowers, but they are very busy creatures. Since they are so busily distracted on these flowers, I try to extend my index finger to slightly pet the top of this bee. I reason that I can touch the top of this bee which is out of the range of its stinger or ability to bite. First couple attempts, I may have moved my hand toward them a little too fast and perhaps pushed a little too much pressure on the bee because the bee instantly flies away in protest. These bees are not very fast, and I don't believe they keep a grudge warranting that they sacrifice their life by pursuing and stinging me. I feel pretty confident I am quick and able to run away if needed. There are lots of bees out diligently working, so I do not have to pursue just one bee. It isn't long before I quickly learn to perfectly time when the bee lands on the flower and how I can delicately pet the bee about 2 times without interrupting its progress and delaying its flight to visit other flowers. Sun-basking garter snakes. All sides of our house in St. Edward, Nebraska, have a 1 by 4 inch wooden siding, and at the base of this wooden siding is another 1 by 8 inch wooden siding skirt sitting on top of the concrete foundation. In the back of the house, this 1 by 8 inch wooden siding is deteriorating, creating gaps and open channels between the wooden siding pieces. During the warm spring and summer months, there are garter snakes literally in the wooden siding with their long bodies drooping out of these gaps and channels, soaking up the good sun. I can easily see up to at least 6 of these garter snakes at a time. I like garter snakes, but many of these garter snakes are too large and intimidating for me to necessarily be playing with or becoming friends. I just leave them alone. Wasp nest. One nice, beautifully sunny day in the late spring, perhaps early summer, I find a familiar winter coat in a high cubby over the top of our stairs in our house. I am so overjoyed to discover this coat. I decide to put it on and pull the hood up and over my head, even though the weather is not even close to demanding such actions. I just want to rejoice in unearthing my prized coat by wearing it once again. After I put it on, I go outside to continue to play. Unexpectedly, I feel several sharp stings in the back of my neck, so I start running around the outside of the house trying to flee from whatever is attacking me. For some reason, it seems like I can't get away and the stings continue. I finally decide to take off my coat and notice a small wasp nest attached to the back lower part inside of the hood of my coat. Tadpoles for pets. There is a time when I go to the lake with my immediate family and bring with me an empty 1-gallon plastic ice cream bucket with a handle and a lid. I submerge it at the water's edge of the lake, and to my excited surprise, I notice I caught some tadpoles and ask my mom if I can take them home and put them in my empty 5-gallon aquarium. My mom said this is okay, and I am super energized once again to be a caretaker of life. I put my tadpole friends in my aquarium and watch them swim up and down, sometimes attaching to the surface of the water upside down. As days go by, I am hoping to see my tadpoles start to grow into frogs. This isn't happening, and it appears there are fewer tadpoles than what I had started with. One day, I am showing another adult from the Jehovah's Witnesses congregation my pet tadpoles. They inform me and my mom these are not tadpoles. Instead of tadpoles, I am harboring mosquito larvae in the living room of our house, and the whole transformational process of water, larvae to flying hungry mosquitoes is being made possible from my 5-gallon aquarium. Upon learning this, I remove enough water to make it possible for me to pick up my 5-gallon aquarium and dump it on the concrete just outside my front door. Mosquitoes are not my friends. To protect cicada friends. Many times as a kid, I find the exoskeletal remains of the fourth instar nymph cicada. One time, I find one and watch it split out of its skin and become an adult cicada. Out of its skin, it doesn't immediately look like a well-developed adult cicada. It is very pale and its wings are all mashed up. The cicada stays motionless while its wings start to open up and extend down the sides of its body. Distinct green and black colors begin to saturate the cicada body. When I am holding the cicada, it doesn't bite or sting me, and so he is on my friends list. One time I see what I think is a yellow jacket, but later learn it is a cicada killer wasp. Attack a cicada in flight about 6 to 10 feet in the air, and they both fall down to the ground. My urgency to save this cicada has me utilize the only thing I have available, which is rock gravel on the street corner. So I seize a handful of gravel and throw it in the direction of this cicada killer wasp attached to my cicada friend. It instantly appears to have disrupted the event because the wasp immediately separates itself from the cicada and flies away while the cicada realizes its regained freedom and flies away also. Frogs and the Ugly Kid. Even when I am not in school as a student, I become pretty familiar with the school grounds, especially the playground area. There are classroom window wells across the front side of the school. I discover inside of these window wells are a lot of frogs. Frogs are definitely my friends, and I like having a peaceful relationship with them. There is this really ugly kid who I think is approximately 4 years older than I, who loves to torment my sensitivities for my frog friends. One of my first memorable encounters with this individual involves me being on the playground of the school during a recess break. I find a frog that I am holding and looking at with curiosity. This kid comes up to me and asks me if he can hold the frog. I am hesitant and question his intentions at first. He then promises me he is not going to hurt the frog, so I guess I want to share the joyful experience I am having with the frog. I hand him the frog. This kid takes this frog and holds it upside down with one of the frog's hind legs in his right hand and the other leg in his left hand. Right in front of me, he proceeds to slowly rip this frog. Graphically, the skin of this frog's legs rip open to cause white muscle tissue to pop out. He then drapes the frog over some monkey bars and jokingly mocks this frog's crippling state. This kid feeds off of my reaction of being in extreme distress. I feel absolutely helpless because I am not big enough to kick his ass. I tell teachers of this event, but I don't think they ever really do anything. This kid begins to seek me out on the school grounds before school is in session. Once he finds me and has my attention, he does other things to frogs, such as throwing them right into the brick of the school. I begin to fear running into this individual since he is making it a point to repeat such actions at every opportunity. I know where the frogs are, and it seems like he knows also. So when I am not in school, I try to free as many frogs as I can from these window wells. I don't know why or how these frogs end up in these window wells all the time, but I know it is unsafe for them. On weekday mornings, I do not want to go to school very early to be waiting outside on the playground because this has been the opportunity for this cruel kid to intentionally seek me out to get his reaction fix. Since we live almost catty-corner from the school, I learned to time it perfectly for me to walk across the street and make it to the schoolyard just as the doors of the school are opening up, so I can get in the school quickly without having to run into this kid. At a young age, I learned very quickly of the dangers animals face in relationship to many of the other people in my immediate community.